So I was waiting around at a red light the other day because I'm a normal person. I wait and I stop for red lights. I know some people take red lights as a challenge, but I don't. I like living, I like existing, and I realize that my life isn't some big epic movie. It's just life. But anyways, I noticed out of the corner of my eye that there was a lost dog poster at the lamppost, which is pretty interesting because that only happens in Scottsdale. Back in Phoenix, that doesn't happen. If you lose an ugly dog, you just move on with your life. You don't go out there and actively post pictures of it trying to find it. The most interesting thing about lost dog posters is that there are people out there, the owners, who actually think that any of us are going to put any effort towards finding this dog. It's your dog. I'm not going out on a search party. I'm not putting my entire life on hold just for your stupid ugly dog. Matter of fact, your dog is probably not lost. He just ran away from you because he was tired of your nonsense. Even your dog was too ashamed to hang out with you. But in all seriousness, they even post like the phone number that you're supposed to call if you ever run into the dog. Again, not gonna remember that phone number. I don't really care about your dog. Sometimes they'll even post whether the dog is a male or a female. Again, what kind of random pedestrian do you think that I am? I'm not gonna go check if your dog has a dong or it doesn't. I could care less. Even if I happen to find this dog and I realize that it's a male, I probably forgot about your phone number, so I'm just moving on with my life. I'm sorry if I'm an awful person. It just is what it is. But anyways, it's just a random observation that I had driving down the street. In today's video, as you guys can pretty much see from the thumbnail, we're talking about some Black Series action figures that just recently went back into stock, and I just wanted to address it and then kind of speculate about some other Black Series action figures that we could potentially see down the line, or some figures that we really want to see come back into stock, because this is, at least in my personal opinion, a really exciting new development. This isn't something that Hasbro does actively for the most part. Even when there's a high demand for an action figure or character, they usually wait the longest amount of time, and they definitely did with these figures as well. But we are talking about the Black Series Commander Fox action figure, as well as the Clone Commander Rex action figure. Now obviously the sales have been all over the place since this figure got originally released. The popularity of clone troopers has fluctuated from time to time. There was an era where clones were at an all-time high. For example, we did see Rex as high as like 120. I think recently it's probably dropped a little bit, but the figure was consistently selling from anywhere like high 80s to about like 120s. Same thing with Commander Fox. You were looking at anywhere from like $60 to $90 if I'm not mistaken. So they were both highly coveted action figures, and I know I usually criticize Hasbro when they slip up. I make entire videos. I make quite a bit of content bashing them. But I've said this before, if an OM does something great, I'm usually commending them. I'm talking them up, putting them up on a pedestal. And that's exactly what I'm doing with Hasbro today, because I thought this was a great idea. Give an opportunity for new collectors and people that might have missed out on these two figures. And for Hasbro, there's no real losing here, because they realize that there is quite a bit of demand, especially if you look at the third party, where a lot of these figures were getting sold in the triple digits. It's a perfect opportunity for Hasbro to re-release these. What's interesting is these are the exact same figures, exact same packaging. Everything is exactly the way that it was released back then. They're essentially just restocking all of or some of the big OMs to be able to resell these action figures. If you're looking at to pick them up, I believe they might be sold out through multiple different retailers, but you were looking to pay about like $25 plus shipping, so somewhere around the lines of $30, but it's still much cheaper than having to pay eBay or Amazon prices. Now I know beggars can be choosers, but honestly I would have much rather preferred them to re-release these in the archives line. That way they would be able to maybe give them some minor upgrades, maybe give us the new body molds for these particular characters, that new clone trooper body mold. I know I should be thankful with what we received, but I'm an action figure collector. We always want just a little bit more. What's really interesting is that I also checked eBay and Amazon for third-party sellers, and I was already seeing a lot of pre-orders going up for about like $50 to $60, which is definitely not what the original OMs were selling selling these figures for. It's just really interesting. Most people are going to think that these are scalpers. I made an entire video where I talked about this in detail, but essentially these are high volume buyers that usually use, I believe Big Bad Toy and Entertainment Earth have like a program where people or businesses can come in and buy at a very high volume at a very discounted rate, and it usually helps Big Bad Toy Store and Entertainment Earth and all of these smaller retail businesses to be able to buy higher volumes and then continue to get really good deals from Hasbro. Some of these people might have a direct contact with Hasbro or some sort of business. They probably buy like thousands, maybe tens and thousands of dollars worth of product, and they're able to get these deals. Regardless, you're looking at some of these already going for like $50 to $60. Again, I wonder why Hasbro is allowing stuff like this to happen. These are not just random individuals buying multiples at retail and then reselling them. That just doesn't make any sense monetarily. I think that these are people that are genuinely connected, that have, you know, their business licenses and all that, and they're buying in bulk and reselling on eBay. But again, that's a conversation for a completely different day. It's just another one of those observations. But I really wanted to talk about what other figures we could potentially see being re-released, whether it's in the archives line or just a plain old restock, because as I said, there are a lot of new people jumping in on the Black Series line, and there may just be people that want to double up on some of these figures. Maybe they bought the originals, but if you're like me, you love posing, you love articulating these figures, and sometimes those joints get just a tad bit loose. This is the fun part of the video where I get to speculate about some potential re-releases, or just like I said, restocking some of these figures. Just because I saw Hasbro do it, I feel like now there's the potential for them to continue doing it, especially if it's successful, which up to this point it appears so. Most of these OMs have already sold out on these figures, so I think that that's a good sign. If Hasbro does enough research, if they go through the third party, I think they'll figure out some of the figures that are still selling really strong out there that are out of stock from regular OMs, and so potentially we could see a lot of these figures down the road. So what are some of these? Well, off the top of my head, for example, we have the Bosk action figure. This was originally released in that regular line, and then eventually we got to see it in the archives line as well. But both of those have gone up astronomically. Last time I checked, the archives version was going anywhere from like $80 to $100. So it's a highly coveted character. We have seen him pop up sporadically, and there are people that constantly speculate on whether he could make another live action appearance, whether it's like in a show or a new movie. So that has always kind of kept the action figure relevant. At this point, I think we're long overdue for a re-release, or as I said, a restocking of this particular figure. We also have that Clone Commander Obi-Wan from the Black Series action figures. This one has also gone up to somewhere along the lines of like $80 to $90, depending on who you're buying it from. But it's a phenomenal figure. A lot of people, or I should say a lot of hardcore collectors, have this one as their all-time favorite Black Series action figure, or at least their favorite Obi-Wan in the line so far. So this is a prime candidate as well. There's definitely the demand for it, and if I'm not mistaken, this might have been like an exclusive to something, maybe Walgreens. I definitely wouldn't put money on it, but if I'm not mistaken, it was a Walgreens exclusive. There was also that Clone Wars Anakin that we received a while back in that bubble packaging. I personally was able to nab up one from Target, but I haven't opened it just because I don't have the extra one. This is one of those waves that perfectly displays in packaging. This is another prime candidate, another figure that is highly sought after. If I'm not mistaken, this figure goes for about like $60 to $70. You also have both versions of Hunter from the Bad Batch animated series. Both of these figures have gained quite a bit of value. If I'm not mistaken, both of them play around with hitting triple digit numbers, and I'm still baffled that Hasbro has not decided to re-release this figure, especially considering the popularity of all these characters is at an all-time high. The Super Commando Walmart exclusive Mandalorian action figure has also flirted with having some really crazy prices attached to it. I believe it's settled around like $60 to $70, but this one was a really interesting one because it was a store exclusive, so a wider release could definitely benefit most collectors, considering it is also an army builder. But I could do this all day long. These are just a few examples of action figures that we could potentially see re-released or restocked from Hasbro, especially since they're starting to show at least somewhat of an inclination towards giving us some of these figures that have completely sold out from regular OMs and are now going for astronomically high prices on the third party. Only time will tell, but I'm extremely hopeful that this is a trend that we continue to see in the future. But as always, I'm very curious to see what you guys have to say. This is just one random dude blabbing on about nonsense. Very curious to see what you guys have to say. Let me know down below in the comment section. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you guys enjoy this type of rambling nonsense about action figures, definitely stay tuned. We upload stuff like this on a regular basis. So stay safe out there, enjoy the hobby, and I will see you guys in the next one.